Anthony Richardson never should have been drafted at 4. He was set up to fail by the Colts from day one, and now he's a wasted pick. Richardson has only played 15 games in 2 seasons because he can't stay healthy, and now he isn't even the week 1 starter entering his 3rd season. The job now belongs to Daniel Jones. That isn't exactly a very inspiring quarterback room. Daniel Jones, Anthony Richardson, and 6th round pick Riley Leonard. What a terrible spot to be in, and it's not fully the Colts' fault. The NFL is so set on trying to find the next Josh Allen, a huge guy who is super raw but figures it out and becomes elite. Cam Newton was a prime example of a big dual threat quarterback, and he had a ton of success winning a Heisman and an MVP. He could beat defenses with his arm and his legs. There were even more comparisons to him for Richardson because both went to Florida, but it makes sense. When Allen came out of Wyoming, he was a gamble with a big arm, even if he was raw. It's hard to find that. Allen had a 56.2 completion percentage and went 16-10 starting. He wasn't a slam dunk. It does make sense to draft a quarterback with a ton of raw talent, but it's not easy to develop. It becomes a high-risk pick that often doesn't work out. Trey Lance going 3rd in 2021 to the 49ers was a perfect example of that. He was so talented, but he's only started 5 NFL games. Then Malik Willis came around with a strong arm and super athletic, but was extremely raw. At least he didn't go too high and dropped the 3rd round to the Titans. He only started 3 games in Tennessee and then landed with the Packers. Paxton Lynch is an earlier example. He was a late 1st round pick in 2016 to the Broncos. He was incredible as a senior at Memphis, and he was 6'7" and surprisingly mobile for that size. It's the boom or bust draft strategy for quarterbacks. Patrick Mahomes fits under the same umbrella, but he just wasn't as raw. Now, he does have the same arm talent and impressive athleticism. Mahomes, Allen, and even Lamar Jackson have created a chase for really athletic quarterbacks. It doesn't matter how raw, teams want to try and fix them. There aren't a lot of success stories, but there are a ton of busts, and Anthony Richardson is now another name on that list. You could see the talent Anthony Richardson had in college, but you could also see the terrible decisions and just how raw he really was. He was definitely fun to watch, but he never proved that he could play at a high level. Definitely not be an NFL quarterback. Anthony Richardson went to Florida, which wasn't a surprise. He went to high school at Eastside, right down the road, and was a 4-star recruit and the number 9 dual threat quarterback in the class. Once he got to Florida, Richardson definitely had to wait his turn. He redshirted during COVID, but did rush for 61 yards and threw 2 passes. He had a 27-yard touchdown pass and an interception. A perfect microcosm of what Richardson has become. Then he was the backup to Emory Jones in 2021. He started once and had to face number 1 Georgia. Wasn't exactly the easiest first start. The Gators got waxed 34-7. Richardson threw for 82 yards and 2 interceptions and rushed for 26 yards. He got a solid amount of playtime as a redshirt freshman, throwing for 529 yards, 6 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions, and rushing for 401 yards and 3 touchdowns. After a long wait, Richardson took over in 2022 as the starter. It was the lone year he actually started in college, and it was interesting. Florida wasn't actually very good, despite having Richardson on an offense with Ricky Pearsall, Trevor Etienne, and Osiris Torrance up front. Florida went 6-6 and made the Las Vegas Bowl, but Richardson didn't play. He finished the season only completing 53.8% of his throws for 2,549 yards, 17 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions. He rushed for 654 yards and 9 touchdowns. The numbers weren't exactly good. If anything, Richardson needed another year at Florida, but the NFL was already enamored with his physical tools, enough to draft him way too high. Anthony Richardson went 4th at the 2023 NFL Draft to the Indianapolis Colts. He was the 3rd quarterback off the board behind Bryce Young and CJ Stroud, who it's safe to say were significantly better in college. Richardson was more of a lottery ticket. He had the gifts, but it had to be put together. If he did pan out, wow, Unfortunately for him, it hasn't worked out that way. He won the week 1 starting job as a rookie, and there were early flashes of why he was such a high pick. Richardson rushed for a touchdown. He threw his first touchdown to Michael Pittman Jr. Those glimpses didn't last very long. Richardson was off to a hot start against the Texans in week 2, but suffered a concussion on his second rushing touchdown. He missed week 3, but returned the next week and played pretty well against the Rams, a bizarre game. The Colts were down 23-0 and came back to tie it and then lost in overtime anyway. Richardson had thrown and rushed for a touchdown in his first 3 starts, but then he suffered an AC joint sprain against the Titans in week 5. He ended up missing the rest of the season and had surgery. He finished the season with a 2-2 record, completed 59.5% of his passes with 577 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 interception, and he rushed for 136 yards and 4 touchdowns. There definitely were positives to take from his rookie year, but there was a long way to go, and 2024 was rough. He got back in time to be named the starter. He didn't play too bad against the Texans in week 1, but then he was awful the next 2 weeks. He threw for a single touchdown with 3 interceptions against the Packers and followed it up with 2 picks versus the Bears. Then he got hurt against the Steelers in week 4. He actually got banged up twice in 4 plays. He got hit in the hip on a run and then hit in the head. He was ruled out for the rest of the game, and then Joe Flacco helped the Colts win. That was on September 29th. Richardson didn't play again until November 20th against the Dolphins. Now, maybe the most memorable moment from Richardson was actually against the Texans in week 8. He took himself out of the game and needed a breather. It's not common to see a quarterback, or anyone for that matter, take himself out of the game for a breather, let alone on a 3rd and long. Richardson already wasn't playing well. That was a horrible look. He ended up getting benched after the week and replaced by Flacco. After the Colts lost back-to-back with Flacco, they started Richardson for the rest of the season. He did play well against the Jets in week 11, a wild 28-27 win. He had a passing touchdown with 1 pick and rushed for 2 touchdowns, including the game-winning touchdown with 46 seconds left. 2 weeks later, Richardson came up big again against the Patriots. He put together a 19-play, 80-yard drive and converted a go-ahead 2-point conversion to beat the Patriots 25-24. Those were some good moments, but it was mostly bad. He had a 47.7 completions percentage. That is ugly. The Colts somehow went 6-5 with him starting, as he threw for 1,814 yards, only 8 touchdowns and 12 interceptions. On the ground, Richardson had 499 yards and 6 touchdowns. He was bad. It was only fair to make him compete during the offseason, and he couldn't even beat out Daniel Jones, having to start week 1 as the backup. Losing a quarterback battle to Daniel Jones has to be demoralizing. I think Jones being named a starter says less about him and more about just how bad Anthony Richardson is. Daniel Jones was mostly a disappointment for the Giants after he was taken 6th at the 2019 draft, but there were good times, specifically in 2022. It was year 1 for Brian Dable, and he worked magic. The Giants went 9-7-1, and Jones was solid. He threw for 3,205 yards, 15 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions, and rushed for 708 yards and 7 touchdowns. The Giants even beat the Vikings in the wild card. It helped Jones cash in on a 4-year, $160 million extension. It has been a mess for him since. In 2023, he tore his ACL in week 9 after he had already missed 3 games with a neck injury. It was a disaster for the Giants. Jones went 1-5 and was terrible, throwing for 909 yards, only 2 touchdowns and 6 interceptions, with 206 yards and a touchdown rushing. He got healthy, came back, but the play just didn't improve much last season. He was the week 1 starter, wasn't even on the roster come December. He went 2-8 with 2,070 yards, 8 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions, with 265 yards and 2 touchdowns rushing. After he was benched for Tommy DeVito, Jones asked to be released and was on November 22nd. He signed with the Vikings practice squad and was later promoted to the active roster. Then in March, Jones signed a 1-year, $14 million deal with the Colts. He was clearly brought in to compete for the starting job with Anthony Richardson, and he won it. I feel bad for Colts fans having to suffer through a Daniel Jones versus Anthony Richardson quarterback battle. It has been so ugly since Andrew Luck retired, and if it helps, I don't think it's getting better anytime soon.